took the Rams right down to the wire.
The Cardinals are the top spot at the moment. That's not going to hold. Kyler Murray and the Cardinals are not going to win this division, but they are 5-4. After that, you've got the Rams, the Niners, each 4-4. The Niners, God willing, man. I mean, if Christian McCaffrey ever does come back.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Are they definitely done with Daniel Jones from this point? And any shot that Dable is off the sidelines, meaning he gets fired before next season?
They have a general manager in Joe Shane. Every big move has to get approval by ownership. So look, the bottom line is they don't know who their future quarterback is past this season. Tommy DeVito's clearly not the answer. They don't have it. Drew Lock's not the answer.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
A lot of concern, I would say, for Georgia in Carson Beck. 3 interceptions. Once again. His third 3-interception game in the last 5 for UGA.
You can argue if they had Alex Orji as their starting quarterback for Georgia, they would be perfect and unbeaten right now just by not turning the football over and running it with your talented backfield.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
It is time for Pro Football Today, the pregame show here on SportsGrid TV. Kasey Hudson, Dave Sharapan, Adam Kaufman, and Tom Vecchio giving you the rundown for Thursday Night Football. We got the Browns taking on the Steelers, and I'm pretty sure we're all leaning in one direction. Look at the well-dressed Dave Sharapan behind me. Now, the weather outside is weather. That's going to play a role, maybe potentially, in this Pittsburgh versus Cleveland Browns matchup tonight. Something else to keep in mind, Pittsburgh is 6-4 straight up and 7-3 against the spread in the last 10 meetings versus this team. But that doesn't mean that there's not plenty to get into, and no better way to unpack it all than with the pregame crew. Dave Sharapan, as always, how are you? Initial thoughts, what's going on? It's Thursday.
It's Thursday,
Questions.
but it's different than a lot of other Thursdays, yes, because we finally have the Steelers playing a primetime game, as they should be multiple times at 8-2. So we get all of the Steelers stuff out, and all I've heard about, literally all week, Case, is 0-5. The Steelers 0-5 under Tomlin, primetime. 0-7 on Thursday nights. 2-8. He's in his career or something in these games, division games, blah, 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 blah. And then it's cold. I wore the winter hat tonight. The weather, because it's cold. It's going to snow. We got a guy named Vinny telling us, an inch an hour, and it's going to be bad, and blah, 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 blah.
Tell me lies. Tell me sweet little lies.
It's 3.5, Case. It's 3.5. The book's not telling you anything. They're telling you to bet the Browns. That's fine. I raised my hand. I'm the first one that thought the Browns last week in the Saints at New Orleans was a good bet. I was completely wrong. You fool me once, you're not fooling me again. I'm rooting for Pittsburgh, obviously.
All right. I love how we switched from the hat to the beanie to make it relevant to the weather outside weathering, that's for sure. But then outside of that, a number of things that I want to get opinions on across the board. We know that sometimes the cold and the rain and all of these weather reports can change some things. And I heard Donnie and Kevin talking about some really interesting things on game time decisions, which just made me feel so much more confident about what I'm whipping out on my betting card tonight. But before I start talking about myself, because it's not about me right now, let's check in with Tom Vecchio. Vecchio, how's it going? How's your Thursday? And initial thoughts on this matchup.
Things are good, and I am straight up shocked that Dave didn't say it's nighttime in Pittsburgh behind him, but I'll say it to keep things rolling. Tonight is all about the Steelers. It's about Najee Harris. It's about a Steelers defensive touchdown. It's about all those things. Last time we were talking about a Steelers game, I was here saying Russell Wilson was going to go for 225 plus. And Dave said I was out here giving a sermon. Adam was talking about Permanente subs. It's going to be the same story that we had that time with Russell Wilson, but it's a Najee Harris game tonight. We're going to see a lot of yards. We're going to see him move the ball on the ground. We're going to see him get into the end zone. Will the weather play a factor tonight? Of course it will. To what degree is what will impact things, because when we're looking at the weather and how it relates to both offenses, I think that will impact the Cleveland offense more in terms of what we see. I also think the Steelers defense is something that we absolutely have to key in on, because a point we're going to get to is Cleveland may not be able to run the ball on the ground, and that means we may need to see a big Jameis Winston game despite the weather. So we're in for a good one tonight despite a 35 or so over-under.
Winston should be working against the wind. And just to add to that context, a winter weather advisory is in play. 38 degrees feels like 25. Of course, I broke this down because I was just like, wow, this makes me nauseous reading this. Snowy and rainy, and there's a 45% chance of rain around kickoff. Kaufman, you came in with the clean cut. You avoided my bet from Monday to shave it all off or come in with the mustache, but good for you, because things got a little weird on Monday. So how are you doing? What are you thinking of this game? Weather, Winston, whatever may play into your thoughts for tonight.
A lot of W's. First off, I hope Lady Carrington had a wonderful birthday
celebration.
You
made
her
year. You made her year.
Listen,
she will not answer to anything other than Lady Carrington. She is officially upgraded to royalty, full royalty.
Listen,
imagine calling her and being like, hey, Mom, who's Mom?
Well, do you think anyone refers to Sir Anthony Hopkins as Tony Hopkins? No, he is Sir Anthony. I mean, that's the way it's supposed to be. Obviously. Look, I don't know what the hell's going on this show, because we've got Vinny talking about, the forecast and an inch an hour and plowing. He's in New York. This game is in Cleveland, not the Meadowlands. And Dave, who I think is in Vegas, is dressed like he's going to Antarctica. So I don't know what to make of what is happening at this moment. But here's what I do know. This total has plummeted since the opening line. This thing opened at 43.5. It has come down basically a touchdown's worth of points because of all this messy weather, the cold weather forecast. Will there be rain? Could there be snow? Maybe there'll be sleet. I don't know. I didn't even intentionally go all Dr. Seuss on you. It just happened, okay? Listen, this game, if we're going to dissect trends, and Dave, he gave out some of them. Steelers are 8-1 straight up in their last 9 divisional matchups. So there's 1 point for Pittsburgh, right? Cleveland, looking at this one here, hang on. The Browns, they're 1-4 against the spread at home. 2 points for Pittsburgh. Let's get one in the Cleveland corner, though. The Browns are facing a Mike Tomlin team that is only 15-30 against the spread on the road following a win. Okay, Mike Tomlin teams ATS on the road after a win, they don't generally respond all that well. But I don't think anybody would dispute who the better team is. Clearly, it is Pittsburgh. 8-2 for a reason. In fact, without looking it up, let me poll the audience real quick. Without looking it up, how many total points have the Steelers lost by this year? Do you know? Dave, you're the Steelers fan. Do you know?
I'd say 10.
28.
Less than 10.
28.
I think it's 10.
6. They have lost 2 games this year by 3 points each. That is insane. I don't know what voodoo doll Mike Tomlin has of every coach that he has faced so far this year, and how he is pulling this off with Russell Wilson, the corpse of Russell Wilson, as his quarterback. But somehow, some way, they're getting it done, and they're going to get it done again tonight.
Ooh, that was a lot of information. But again, friends are our friends until they are not, and we appreciate all of that. But one thing I will say is that we have learned that trends, especially when it comes to prime time, have varied when it comes to this season specifically. So we could still be in for the lot of it. Now, Dave, taking it back to you. Sportsbooks are going to try to lean us one way or another. I did hear Donnie mention the fact that while the weather is clearly not ideal, it really shouldn't affect that much. So while everyone's jumping on this, it's a Najee Harris game, no offense, Tom, and it's going to be a ground game for the protection. He doesn't think that it's particularly going to heavily go that direction too much because it really shouldn't be that impactful. What say you?
Well, I mean, the books take bets leading up until kickoff, and then even during the game while the weather is happening. So, and they stay open. It's not like it always goes one way. It's okay. So I've sat in a book a long, long time and watched these things. People running up to the counter, they'll see the pregame and they'll go, oh, it's snowing. Oh, it's raining. And bet under. And then halfway through the third quarter, they're going, why did I do that? And now at least in game, you can get out of bad bets. I don't think this weather means for these two teams automatically an under. I think the Steelers defense might mean an under. Cleveland team total under. How about that play?
All right, some things to consider there, but the most important thing is that we will unpack this even further and take these position groups head-to-head to give you the best angles, odds, and lines heading into this Thursday night matchup between the Browns and the Steelers. So don't go anywhere, making sure you're following SportsGrid over at SportsGrid. Follow each of us and stick with us here on Pro Football Today, the pregame show, on the other side of this quick break.
Enter into the magical world of McLuck.com, where even the smallest of spins can win real cash prizes. Adventure into over 1,000 of the best Vegas-style slot games. So what are you waiting for? Unlock your free welcome offer today. Join the fun where winners play and players win.
The Seahawks, I expected a bounce back after that poor performance against Buffalo the week before. They took the Rams right down to the wire.
The Cardinals are the top spot at the moment. That's not going to hold. Kyler Murray and the Cardinals are not going to win this division, but they are 5-4. After that, you've got the Rams, the Niners, each 4-4. The Niners, God willing, man. I mean, if Christian McCaffrey ever does come back.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Are they definitely done with Daniel Jones from this point? And any shot that Dable is off the sidelines, meaning he gets fired before next season?
They have a general manager in Joe Shane. Every big move has to get approval by ownership. So look, the bottom line is they don't know who their future quarterback is past this season. Tommy DeVito's clearly not the answer. They don't have Drew Lock's not the answer.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
A lot of concern, I would say, for Georgia in Carson Beck. 3 interceptions once again. His third 3-interception game in the last 5 for UGA.
You can argue if they had Alex Orji as their starting quarterback for Georgia, they would be perfect and unbeaten right now just by not turning the football over and running it with your talented backfield.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back into Pro Football Today, the pregame show with Kasey Hudson, Dave Sharapan, Tom Vecchio, and Adam Kaufman, getting you ready for the Browns hosting the Steelers. Now, we talked about the fact that the weather could play a role in this, but our job is to find the best bets, angles, odds, and all the goodies for you for this matchup. We started talking about how much this weather could affect everyone, and then of course, the initial headline whenever there's weather involved, I've said weather too many times now, is that it's going to be a heavy run game situation. So, Tom, I'm going to take it to you and talk about this running back group. Take this head-to-head, the most favorable props and odds looking at these two groups here. So what do you think initially along the lines of it is a Harris game?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure whether the weather is going to play a massive role in this game.
Nice.
And I'm big on Harris tonight. Like that's the point I'm making throughout the show. I think the Nick Chubb props are far more interesting to talk about just because I'm so heavily invested into the Harris props. The Nick Chubb props, I think, come down to a certain point. The Steelers, they're allowing 90 rushing yards per game. That's the fourth fewest in the NFL. So at a certain point, we're dealing with the weather. We're dealing with the run game. In my mind, I see the Steelers saying, hey, run the ball at us and watch what happens. They're not going to be able to move it. So Chubb may be ineffective, and if that offense is ineffective on the ground, they have to turn to Jameis Winston in the passing game. So despite the weather, and despite, we may see fewer passing yards, fewer passing attempts, we actually may need to see a lot from Winston just because they can't move the ball on the ground. The Steelers are literally going to look them in the eye and say, keep coming at us. You're not going to be able to move the ball on the ground against Chubb or by Chubb against their defense. And Chubb's been largely ineffective. He's not the same running back he was years ago coming off, a major injury. So at a certain point, I kind of like Chubb under rushing attempts as the best one. And then I'm all over Najee Harris on a TD, over on his yards. I think we can work him into the SGP. We'll get to all that. But Harris game tonight, getting into the end zone, and 70-plus yards are the main two things that I'm on.
Love it. Not to mention is that I do agree when it comes to the Chubb factor, not to be funny with that one, but something else that I want to kind of evaluate here. I noticed how it sounds after the fact. You're looking at Chubb's yardage at sitting at 54.5. You're looking at Harris sitting at 73.5. But more importantly, did anybody else notice that so many of the touchdown props are sitting at plus money value versus there being any minuses? Because I haven't seen them. Adam, I know you're not big into the whole touchdown conversation, but kind of build off of the running back conversation and let me know if you saw all of the plus value for the touchdowns tonight.
Well, I'm sure our wonderful graphics department has something we can throw up on the screen with a lot of plus money opportunities when it comes to anytime touchdowns. You're right. I mean, unless it's a game that I look at and say this is going to be a high scoring contest, I'm not all that drawn to anytime touchdowns. There's your list. And could any of these guys conceivably get in? Sure, but I am looking much like Tom at Najee Harris first. He is going to get a lion's share of the load tonight. He is the number one option when it comes to short yardage territory in the red zone, and there's a reason the odds reflect that, right? Looking at the plus 110 and always shop it around, see if you can get a better number. Maybe he gets sniped in there by Jaylen Warren in theory at plus 270, but I don't trust Nick Chubb right now. I think he is a great running back when he's right, but he hasn't been right so far since returning in a few weeks since that MCL, ACL injury and obviously missing the bulk of last year, as Tom highlighted. He hasn't looked good. I mean, the prop that you have him at, not you, but you know what, you, Dave, you're the book. The prop that you have him at tonight is sitting in the mid-50s, a number that he hasn't cleared in any of his games so far this year.
Nope.
And now he's going against a solid run defense. So I don't know why anyone would do anything but take the under on Nick Chubb's rushing props tonight. No, by the way, the Steelers are only allowing 3.9 yards per carry. Now, on the other side, the Browns are allowing about 130, a little north of that, yards rushing per game. And so I'm in agreement with Tom, but I will add to that, it's not just going to be a Najee game. I think it's going to be a Jaylen Warren game, especially with the short week. You always see the backup running backs.
Whoa!
You always see the backup running backs, guys, show out in short weeks. And with a Thursday night, like if this were a Sunday, I wouldn't necessarily feel this way. But on a Thursday in a game where the weather is already going to dictate rushing versus passing, and on top of that, the Steelers, we all project Pittsburgh to be ahead in this game. They're going to be handing off the ball to kill clock, and Harris is not going to take every carry. So it's Harris going over, it's Warren going over. If you feel more comfortable with Warren's rushing plus receiving and getting that sub yards, I would do that because he can be a weapon in the receiving game as well. I think these two guys are in excellent spots tonight.
I love that you mentioned him because that's where I was going with me thinking, oh my gosh, I'm a genius and I'm not going to make this about me. But I'm going to put Tom's hat on for a second because Warren has also had 9+ carries in the last 4 of his 5 games. So when you're considering the workload here between the two and him getting more involved, his carries and his attempts is just sitting at 8.5, where you can bank on likely him getting 9+ getting involved in this matchup tonight. Also, something else when it comes to going back to the Browns and Nick Chubb, not to beat up on Chubb any further here, but the value in which they're predicting him getting in the end zone I found so interesting because they haven't had a rushing touchdown. They've only had one rushing touchdown in their last 5 games, and in the last 3 games that has been non-existent. So to think that you're going to run through a brick wall of the Steelers to finally get in the end zone, I thought that was so weird. Dave, am I onto something here, or are the books just trying to throw us yet again?
No, I love everything all of you are saying. Everything you're saying sounds like they're just going to hand the ball to the Steeler running backs. The Steelers are going to just roll, kind of like Houston did on Monday night. Everything you're saying, everything you're all saying is just hand the ball off to the running backs. You even got the backup running back involved. I love that. I love Warren. He runs so hard, and he's a vital part of making first downs. He sees a lot of opportunities. I'm looking at the rushing attempts. I can't believe none of you mentioned that. I was waiting for Vecchio to hit me with that. 18.5 for Najee. It's 14.5 with Chubb. I don't think he's getting that. I don't think the Browns are going to be able to run the ball. They're going to try, and they're going to be ineffective, or down 10-0, where they're going to have to, air it out like they did last week. Jameis threw for all those yards. They couldn't get in the end zone because the red zone defense worked for the Saints. By the way, the red zone defense for the Steelers is pretty good. So everything you're saying, I love everything, all of it. We're good. Perfect.
I went from pulling a Tom to pulling an Adam. I will say this, Warren for rush attempts over 8.5 is sitting at plus money at plus 100. So I did mention the attempts, but we're going to continue to unpack the position groups. But more importantly, it's time for some same game parlays and to see who takes the cake with this one. I'm thinking that these cards could potentially look alike again, or who knows. But Dave is going to be in the hot seat once we get back from this quick break.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this once?
Oh, Donnie, you've got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
The sharpest football contest show in the land, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show, focuses on Circus Sports Million, Circus Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With 2 former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
We live in a society right now where everybody's a snowflake, everybody's a cupcake, and everybody thinks that nothing is fair. Everything is like, it's not fair. We should have a better chance. We need more. You know what? I'm old enough to remember when you needed to have a perfect goddamn record to win a college football championship. That's the way it was. 11-1, too bad.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
When you look at Marcus Johnson, when you look at Nikola Jokic, these aren't guys that are big, super athletic, dunking and jumping over people. These are just guys that are clean, skilled footwork, and do things below the rim that make the everyday guy look like and be like, I can do that. But you can't, and neither can I.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Back at it with Pro Football today. It's the pregame party. Kasey, Dave, Tom, and Adam. But the fun part is the same game parlays. Let's roll it. I've said Thursday 500 times, but I sure was going to throw it to Adam. It's Thursday, which means Tom gets the SGP party started. Tom, I'm so sorry. That was rude. What do you got for us today?
Yeah,
You just want to hear my parlay. I get it.
I was just so excited for the 4 legs coming from Adam.
Just contain yourself. There you go.
Easy does it. Easy.
Let's roll into it. SGP. Mine is super simple. They're not big odds. Right from the jump, it's not big odds. It's sitting at plus 244. It's slightly changing depending on what you get the Harris number. I tweeted about Harris the other day over 66.5 rushing yards. That number's up to 73. So I'm taking him at 70 plus yards, sitting at minus 130. The Harris TD at plus 110 and the Steelers money line at minus 190. This is an awesome matchup for Harris on the ground. He has 63 plus yards, and for the last 5, he's been over 100 yards 3 times. Looking back at the recent game log for the Cleveland defense, Alvin Kamara went for 67 yards. And I'm talking about just running backs. Obviously, Taysom Hill ran all over the Cleveland defense. But Kamara, a running back, specifically went for 67 yards last week. J.K. Dobbins went for 85. Derrick Henry went for 73. They are clearly susceptible on the ground. So I expect Najee Harris to go over the 66.5, which is where I got him out. I tweeted out a couple of days ago. I expect him to go over 70 plus, which is what we want for this same game parlay. And of course, finding the way into the end zone. I messed around. Did I want to put the Steelers on the spread in there? There's weather issues. It is a divisional game in a short week, et cetera, et cetera. All these trends saying that Tomlin and the team doesn't win or they didn't cover. I expect them to win. And I expect this to be a very straightforward game from the Steelers because of 2 things. A, this is a divisional game, but B, the Ravens are playing against the Chargers, and that is not an easy matchup for the Ravens, and we know the Steelers already have a head-to-head victory against the Ravens, so this is a chance for the Steelers to pick a little bit of breathing room in the division and pick up that extra win, so it's all about the Steelers tonight.
All right, I like it. Plus, yes, Taysom Hill actually filled out adoption papers versus the Browns over the previous couple of days for full ownership. Now, Adam, give us your SGP. What do you got going?
I'll tell you what, Kasey. 3 legs. 3 legs
wow.
on this one.
Wow.
I know. Straight to the point. No alts. Didn't get crazy with it. And it is still a plus
wrong?
533 available to you on FanDuel. I know. We're going all minus 110s and piling them together. Just 3 bets that I really like. You might even call them best bets. And assembling the machine right here. Now, I don't need to go on and on about Najee Harris. Tom did that. We have done that collectively on the show. It is a Najee night. I agree. Let's look at the quarterbacks here. Jameis Winston, Russell Wilson, both of them to go over their passing props. This is an overcorrection by the books because of this perceived terrible weather that we are going to be dealing with tonight. These totals, these numbers, too low. Who cares if it's cold? They can throw in the cold. They're athletes. They're professional athletes. This is too much of an overcorrection. All right, listen. When you consider, let's talk about Russell Wilson first. This Browns defense is allowing, on average, about 230 passing yards per game. Russell Wilson, since becoming the starter, a decision I did not agree with, mind you, and yet here we are. It's worked out splendidly for the Steelers. He is averaging about 230 passing yards per game. You're going to come in the book and give me a number that is almost 50 below that? 50? It doesn't make a lick of sense. He has exceeded this number in every game that he has started. I absolutely expect him to do it again. It is too low. We're not even at 190. And then Jameis, and we're going to sit here and talk about how the Steelers are going to get ahead and they're going to win. They can't rely on Nick Chubb in the run game. Of course, they're going to be passing the football, and Jameis might turn the ball over. He is prone to mistakes. There's no doubt about it. But in 3 starts, passing games of 395, 334, and one that was against an excellent pass defense from the Chargers, still hit 235. And we are getting, 216, 217? I'm going over. I'm smashing the over. I'll alt the over on Jameis Winston. He is going to be passing all over the field tonight. We'll talk about the receivers later. So over Wilson, over Winston, over Najee, plus 5 and change, depending on where you shop around.
A couple big fat overs, a nice facial response from Tom, and plenty to think about for Dave. And I'm just surprised that nobody wanted to alt Harris to 80 plus at plus money, but that's none of my business. We're going to continue to take these groups head to head, break down the running back group even further, maybe see if we can pick somebody who's really going to find the end zone tonight. And then more importantly, we do have to talk about the wide receivers because the weather is only going to weather so much as we have all come to the same consensus on. So don't go anywhere. Stick with us here on Pro Football Today. It's the pregame party here on SportsGrid TV.
two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this one?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
The sharpest football contest show in the land, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show, focuses on Circus Sports Million, Circus Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With two former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
We live in a society right now where everybody's a snowflake, everybody's a cupcake, and everybody thinks that nothing is fair. Everything is like, it's not fair. We should have a better chance. We need more. You know what? I'm old enough to remember when you needed to have a perfect goddamn record to win a college football championship. That's the way it was. 11-1, too bad.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
When you look at Marcus Johnson, when you look at Nikola Jokic, these aren't guys that are big, super athletic, dunking and jumping over people. These are just guys that are clean, skilled footwork, and do things below the rim that make the everyday guy look like and be like, I can do that. But you can't, and neither can I.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Back at it with Pro Football Today, the pregame show with Kasey, Tom, Dave, and Adam. I had to have a little moment of truth there. I said the wrong word closing out the segment because my lip gloss decided to stick, and I have such accountable friends. These three heads just holding me so true to form when it comes to using the proper verbiage and words for things. So just know I am never going by without knowing that I've made a mistake. I love you guys for that. All right, Vegas, you're in the hot seat. You got two SGPs. They're not particularly identical like last time, so you can't just say everything's good, everything's great, love them both. So which direction are you leaning in?
Though.
Right.
Did really come close. We really did. That was fun. And we did come to a consensus. I actually, during the break, like my lip gloss off. So we're good. We're all good.
I got scared to say it again. This lip gloss is just betrayal.
If that Nico Collins touchdown off the top of the game had counted, I think we would have hit the parlays.
If that Collins TD hit, I probably wouldn't be here today because I'd be living on an island at that point.
A lot would have changed if Nico Collins would have found the end zone. I swear, Tom was so red over it. Yes.
I was so excited when he did that, and it was the first play, and I was like, oh, my gosh, this is the one we needed. He's going to have the most yards. It's perfect. It's all going to work out. And
the script was lining up beautifully.
Perfect. Absolutely.
And then it burned.
So close.
The script tonight, all right, when you look at Adam's same-game parlay, it looks great. And, again, this is perfect because that means Jameis is passing, because Cleveland is down. That's going to hit. You got the over with the Najee, which means they're running the ball, imposing their will like Houston did to Dallas on Monday. But then you put in this Russell Wilson over 182.5 because of the adjustment, and it's low, and one thing doesn't go with the other. Now look at Vecchio's, and it's a work of art. All right, it's a couple favorite things, but the Steelers on the money line takes away all of the headache of the 3.5. So if they win this game by 3, and the bettors aren't happy, but the Steeler fans are, this works. Anytime touchdown for Najee, yes. Yardage for Najee, yes. Adam, it's nothing personal. The beard looks great. The haircut is awesome.
Listen,
Vecchio wins on a Thursday.
The one SGP with a little bit of Browns love on it was not a work of art. That felt some type of way.
Plus 2.5 versus plus 5.5. But fine, I'm going to sit here. I'm going to place Vecchio's parlay. Hang on, it's okay. I want to be a supportive teammate here. Make sure that
we're here to pick up wins,
money
right?
Together.
I am considering, and I will be perfectly honest, I have just Harris TD plus Steelers money line, but we're not getting big plus money on that. You can add in the yards, you could do this, you could alt them, et cetera, et cetera. There's a number of different ways to take it. But a Steelers win and a Najee Harris TD, just a two-leg, I think is very reasonable. We're not going to get big odds. I get that. But I wanted to bring this one tonight. I have both, though, just to be clear.
So, Tom, talk to me for a second. Knowing that Harris will likely have a big game tonight, knowing that he has hit 114 versus the Giants, 102 versus the Jets. Yes, he hasn't broke 60-plus per se in the last two games, but outside of that, would alting him up to 80 for plus money be of any interest?
I would do that not in the SGP. I think that's a totally viable route to go. I would prefer if I could have gotten his 80 plus when his number was sitting at 66 instead of getting it, alting it now when his number is sitting at 73. That's what I would love to do, but I just don't have that.
All right. So let's switch groups for a second because, like I mentioned, because of the weather, we jumped into the running back stuff. We gave everybody their precautionary measures. At least I feel like we've done our job in that sense. So let's talk about some wide receivers. You got George Pickens, who has been enjoying his connections with Russell Wilson, whether you like the change or not, as of October 20th. Then you got Jerry Jeudy, who a lot of people are like, hey, he's got to find the end zone tonight, right? Not sure. Then you got Cedric Tillman, which I find him to be a very interesting angle considering the numbers he puts up on home field. Njoku, a number of options to go to. So starting with the wide receiver specifically, Adam, talk to me about any appeal or angles when it comes to the wide receiving group.
So I think there are a lot of interesting things to consider when it comes to the wide receivers, but you do have to kind of take that leap of faith with me and support passing overs when it comes to these quarterbacks. George Pickens has been he stifles me at times. He certainly felt unreliable with Justin Fields.
Yes.
But with Russell Wilson, I mean, these two simpatico, Dave. There's no denying the chemistry. And just to give you some of the specifics. To give you a concisus, just pulling up the game log right here because it bounced around on me. So over the last few games, just look at the last few. So we went 8 for 12 for 89 receiving yards last time out against the Ravens. Prior to that, it's just a reliable target, really is what it comes down to. Is my screen is jumping. 7 targets, 5 targets, 8 targets. I mean, Russell Wilson can't help but look in his direction. 5 for 9 in that game against the Jets where he went for 111. He has had at minimum 74 receiving yards every game that he has played with Russell Wilson. And now you're going to give us a prop that is, again, sitting as low as it is. You have to consider it. On the Cleveland side, what I find really interesting with Jameis Winston, and I'm sure these guys can speak more to it as well, is that he has just really spread the ball around. It's the whole, my favorite receiver is the open receiver kind of thing, because the target volume going to Moore, to Tillman, to Jeudy, to Njoku, it's fairly comparable when you boil it down to the last month's worth of games that Winston has essentially been starting. And so my advice, it costs you a little bit more, but hopefully makes you a little bit more. When all of these guys are looking at receiving props that are sitting not even at 50 yards, high 30s into the mid to high 40s, I would play the over on all 4 of those guys and figure that 3 out of the 4 probably end up cashing. That's the approach that I would take.
Wild. Tom, talk to me about the wide receivers. I mean, Adam makes a great point. There is a lot of target share opportunities on the Browns side. It gets a little bit more specific on the Steelers side, but where do you lean in all this?
I think I'm on board with the Browns take. Adam and I were talking pre-show. Where it's like not all of these guys are going to hit the over. 2 of them will, 3 of them will. I think that's a totally reasonable thing to do, especially if you're buying into the Browns playing from behind. They have to pass the ball, et cetera, et cetera. The Pickens, I think, is interesting because do we know his longest reception? If we have that, because Pickens is also kind of the player. 24 and a half. Pickens is kind of 24 and a half.
Okay.
So Pickens is kind of a player that you could do the old double dip on, where he gets a touchdown, the long reception, he hits over 9 yards. Like that has been his role for the Steelers since he drafted him. He's always been that kind of deep play threat. So I like that. When we're looking at his odds for a touchdown between him, Jalen Warren, and maybe Pat Freiermuth, one of the three are going to score. And we're looking at some serious plus money. I think they're all over 2-1. So Harris is kind of the given at plus 110 or whatever it is, but then someone else is going to score. And I think Pickens may be that answer. I think Freiermuth is a good red zone target. He may not have a ton of yards tonight, but Pickens may be the best overall option between yards and or touchdown.
I like it. Dave, what are your thoughts when it comes to the wide receivers and the amount of options that we have at our hands here, whether it's finding the end zone or just kind of the yardage? Would you jump on some of the over options here?
Pickens' receiving yards is 60.5 currently right now. His receptions is 4.5, with the under being juiced ridiculously right now. I just hit refresh. It's minus 152. What? I mean, if everything that we're talking about happens, he's going to catch the most passes. He doesn't catch 5 at plus money. I don't know. I think that one's live. Whether he scores a touchdown or not, I can't wait to talk about the tight ends, even if it's quick, fast, and easy, because not Freiermuth, but Washington. Washington may actually be the one that gets his over receptions. He's the guy. They may find Freiermuth to get the touchdown, yes, but Washington to get over 1.5 receptions. He don't catch 2 passes? I think he's catching 2 passes.
You and Donnie Rightside may have had a little bit of a chit-chat or share a brain today, because he said the same thing on Game Time Decisions, that it's more Washington than anything else. Don't go anywhere. Continue to hang with us here on Pro Football Today. It's the pregame show here on SportsGrid TV.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this once?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
The sharpest football contest show in the land, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show, focuses on Circus Sports Million, Circus Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With 2 former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
We live in a society right now where everybody's a snowflake, everybody's a cupcake, and everybody thinks that nothing is fair. Everything is like, it's not fair. We should have a better chance. We need more. You know what? I'm old enough to remember when you needed to have a perfect goddamn record to win a college football championship. That's the way it was. 11-1, too bad.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
When you look at Marcus Johnson, when you look at Nikola Jokic, these aren't guys that are big, super athletic, dunking and jumping over people. These are just guys that are clean, skilled footwork, and do things below the rim that make the everyday guy look like it'd be like, I can do that. But you can't, and neither can I.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
You are watching Pro Football Today. It's the pregame show with Kasey Hudson, Dave Sharapan, Tom Vecchio, and Adam Kaufman. But before we get into the tight ends, y'all know how much I love my tight ends. It's time for us to get into some like it, love it, leave it. First, let's get going. Now, respectfully, I can say Adam goes first because Tom takes the SGP first. You see, I'm on top of it. What do you got for us today, Adam?
Well, look, you already know that I am supporting the overs on passing props for both Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston, so why not look at a couple of the guys that I think are going to get a fair amount of that yardage? They have been essentially number one targets for these two guys. George Pickens, over the last 4 games, I mentioned it, 8 of 12 for 89, 5 of 7 for 91, 4 of 5 for 74, 5 of 9 for 111. Jerry Jeudy on the other side, who is really emerging now in that Browns offense. What he has been doing of late is really putting up some ghastly numbers, if you will. Can you tell that I stall while my computer is refreshing itself? 6 of 11 for 142 last week, 7 of 11 for 73 prior, 5 of 8 in that first game with Jameis Winston for about 80 yards. What I'm telling you is that all those numbers, heavy volume, lots of receptions, at minimum 75 receiving yards in each game for both of those guys, spanning 3 in one case, 4 weeks in the other. We're simply looking for 12 plus receiving yards in each half or 20 plus receiving yards in each half from both guys. And you can get that at 8-1. Seems to me, Dave, the evaluator, like a very smart bet.
Oh, wow. That was pointed. Tom, what are you adding? What are you throwing on the table? Although I like it, Adam, because it kind of correlates with what I got going on. So what do you got, Tom?
It's a Thursday night. It's a divisional game. Things tend to be a little bit weird in divisional games, short weeks. Let's go to a Steelers defensive touchdown at plus 700. Now, Jameis Winston has thrown the ball 40-plus times in 3 straight games. He had a great game last week, if you want to call it that, almost 400 yards, no interceptions. He's throwing the ball at this high of a rate, and he's not throwing interceptions. I think he's due for a little bit of regression. We know the pressure that not only the Steelers' defense overall can bring, but T.J. Watt specifically. There's weather. It's a divisional game. It's a short week. Are we not expecting some amount of turnovers tonight? Something weird to happen. The ball slips out. He slips. Someone picks it up. They run it in, and right in front of the dog pound, whatever it might be. Steelers defensive touchdown feels like the play. I'm not going to go as far to say is Steelers defensive touchdown is the first touchdown of the game. I wouldn't go that far, but I think at plus 700, we're getting a good number here on a team that should be playing from behind and a turnover-prone quarterback throwing the ball, leading to a defensive touchdown.
I'm a fan of it. You're talking about one of those defenses that with every tackle, they make sure they try to strip the ball. So, I mean, a lot of different things can happen when stripping gets involved. All right. Mine correlates with Adams down there. Somebody caught it. Jerry Jeudy, George Pickens to score either or. I'm sorry, there was an or there. To score the first TD plus 500. I mean, I just figured, hey, we talked about the fact that rushing touchdowns really shouldn't be a thing for the Browns. Judy's been the guy, especially at home field, to find the end zone. Then there's a bit of a bromance going on with him and Winston when things don't get crazy and wild. And then George Pickens and Russell Wilson, we already talked about their bromance. So that's my long shot for today. What do you got, Dave? What do you think?
I feel like
to think on.
I feel like I'm sitting on Santa's lap and telling him what I want for the holidays, and you guys are giving me every single thing that I asked for. Everything on the list. I don't know. I mean, it's like it, love it, or leave it. I can tell you right now, we'll work in reverse. There's no leaving anything. Okay,
wow.
we are on board with all 3 of those. Now, Case, I want to love it, but you got the wide receivers. You're just going to ignore the fact that Najee night, that Vecchio said this is Najee night, and you went with a nice payout. So I like it.
Maybe superstitiously. Let's bring some superstition into this. When Tom says that it's so-and-so's game, it totally is like 98.76% of the time. But as for the first touchdown, Collins got robbed, and his dudes get robbed when it comes to the first touchdown opportunity. So, like, switching it up a little bit, a wide receiver getting in the end zone.
We've seen that multiple times.
We have. So now I'm going off of some sort of logic here. I'm just making my case. In case you wanted to love it, you know, you don't have to all caps love it, but in case you wanted to hop on the love train, if not, that's fine. You're lost. But I just want to throw that out there.
We're just gonna like that tonight.
So she's
very good case.
So she's not fading Tom's play. She's just fading his first touchdown, basically.
If it were to be. Right, exactly.
Right.
I mean, we've seen
because we've seen crazy things happen. We've seen it happen. We've been on the Twitter interacting, and people are tweeting at us about Tom getting robbed. So it's undeniable that that's happening.
People feel Tom's pain too. We're all here for Tom.
They feel the pain. It's a group root. It happens. Vecchio, for the first time, has involved a defensive play, and it's the Steelers. What do you think I'm going to say? Of course I love that one, okay? And Adam, you did great work with yours. This is. I swear.
Just pat him on the head.
I'm surprised. No. I love this one. I don't believe that this number should be paid this much. Like 20 yards per half. I was shocked. And a lot of times it takes a lot to shock me from the numbers and the things I've seen in years and years in the sports book. But when this came up and it said plus 800, I almost questioned Vincenzo that the price was wrong, but I know better to do that. That's the right price. The bet it goes as written. And Adam, I love that too.
All right.
I will also say sometimes it's important to note that you like the bet or you love the bet because of how the game's going to play out, or you love the bet because of the number that's being offered. That's also an important sometimes distinction to make. Like if this number was at 12-1, we would love the bet. Even though we may not exactly think that the game would play out in a certain way, the number is worth betting.
Right. Interesting. All right, we didn't get a chance to break down the tight ends.
You're not going to love a Steelers defensive touchdown at even money.
Right.
No.
We'll continue with that as well as touch on the tight ends once we get back from another break that we are up against here. Make sure you're following SportsGrid over at SportsGrid. Make sure you're following all of these three handsome faces. And more importantly, make sure you stick with us on the other side of this quick break.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this one?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
The sharpest football contest show in the land, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show, focuses on Circa Sports Million, Circa Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With two former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
We live in a society right now where everybody's a snowflake, everybody's a cupcake, and everybody thinks that nothing is fair. Everything is like, it's not fair. We should have a better chance. We need more. You know what? I'm old enough to remember when you needed to have a perfect goddamn record to win a college football championship. That's the way it was. 11-1, too bad.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
When you look at Marcus Johnson, when you look at Nikola Jokic, these aren't guys that are big, super athletic, dunking and jumping over people. These are just guys that are clean, skilled footwork, and do things below the rim that make the everyday guy look like it'd be like, I can do that. But you can't, and neither can I.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back into Pro Football Today, the pregame show with Kasey, Dave, Tom, and Adam. We just went through some like it, love it, and leave it. We got a lot of we got some love, and regardless, nobody got left behind. So that's what's most important. On this Thursday, we got the Browns taking on the Steelers, and a good game ahead, honestly. I feel like we will. So before we get final thoughts, Dave, I'm going to throw this one to you because you always show some love for the tight ends. And as I mentioned beforehand, Donnie was mentioning that it's not going to be your typical tight ends night. He's leaning towards Washington, but we also know that David Njoku can be a huge factor in tonight's game for the Browns to try to keep this close. 41.5 when it comes to the receiving yards, 4.5 when it comes to his receptions, and plus 370 if he gets a tutty tonight. What do we think of the tight end matchup?
I think for Cleveland to be successful, Njoku does have to have over his yardage prop. So if you think Cleveland's going to be in the game, I think, not that it's correlated, but I think him over receiving yards is definitely in play. The touchdown prop is, I mean, if I still think Cleveland's scoring one touchdown tonight, like one touchdown, 2 field goals, and 13 points. That's where I'm at with them. Maybe they get 17, which is 2 touchdowns and a field goal, but that's it. They're not getting 20 points. So I think you got to be pretty selective about who gets the touchdown. It's probably not going to be Chubb. It could be a tight end, without a doubt. Let's hope it's Judy, and he catches a pass for over 20 yards. I want all of these things to happen.
Oh, thank you. Well, guess what? My feelings would not be hurt if it's not Mr. Judy, because I do have Njoku at that plus 370. Tight ends have found the end zone 3 times versus the Steelers. They're sitting at an average of 5.1 receptions, and then yardage 45, so that works perfectly for one David Njoku. Tom, what do you think? Final thoughts, tight ends, anything else you want to throw onto the table before we close out?
Yeah, I really like David Njoku today, over 44.5, over 43, whatever it might be. One of the key things, if we're expecting the Browns to be playing from behind, that means that the Steelers pass rush is going to be able to get after them. And David Njoku has a 4.3 ADOT, that's average depth of target. So Jameis is not going to have a whole lot of time to sit back in the pocket, scan the field, find the best option. No, the pass rush is going to be getting after him. That means he has to get the ball out quickly. And David Njoku has five receptions or more in 5 straight games. So yeah, they're not going to be big chunk plays for 20 or 30 yards. That's just not his role. But give me 5-6 receptions. You're picking up 8 or so yards at a time. I think you can get there tonight.
Yeah, and we know that Jameis Winston, at least I know from the Buccaneers days, he loves a big body in the end zone when things get a little too complicated offensively. Adam, final thoughts? Any other thoughts when it comes to the tight ends? What say you?
Yeah, look, we're in agreement. I'm a big fan of Njoku tonight, although I would rather the receptions versus the yards. I just think the yards with him are way too inconsistent. You look over the last 5 games, he has had at least 5 catches in each of those games, whereas the yardage has been all over the map. We have 81, 29, 61, 76, 31. All 5 of those reception props would have cleared. Only 3 out of the 5 yardage-wise would have cleared. That is because even though the long offerings, the long receptions that he has had so far in those games of 18, 11, 23, 15, 14 are littered with very, very short gains around it. So, I think you're going to see some of those tonight. I think, though, that absolutely Winston's going to be looking in his direction. We all agree on that. It's just a function of whether he can break off a couple of those to clear the yards prop or whether it's going to be just short catches. And that's what I'm willing to invest in.
I like it. All right. Final thoughts have been made. But, Dave, can you give us a final score prediction? It's your team. It's your night. It's prime time. What do you think that this final score is going to close out as?
So they didn't score any touchdowns last week against the Ravens. Actually, last week, it was 4 days ago. They're scoring touchdowns tonight, okay? So forget about that scorigami stuff. They're not getting 18. It's not happening, all right? 27 for the Steelers, 13 for the Browns. The game goes over the total. Everybody's wondering how this could possibly happen in this wintry mix, cold night, blah, 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 blah,
Winter
blah, blah.
warnings.
Pittsburgh plays in the cold. Cleveland plays in the cold. Kasey Hudson is learning how to play in the cold, okay?
She is.
We're going to get there, Case, all right? you just bundle up, put your hood up, all right? Put your hat on and wave a terrible towel like the rest of the people should. Let's go Steelers. Win the game.
There's the rally. There's the rally. I'm getting my snow tires. Make sure you're following. Again, these three handsome faces will all be chatting over on X throughout the game. In-game live is coming up after one more segment for Pro Football Today. But I've got Joe Lisi joining me at the Magic Wall to break down more best bets for this Thursday night matchup. So follow along with these guys. Follow SportsGrid over at SportsGrid and stick with us for one more rally here on Pro Football Today, the pregame show on SportsGrid.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this once?
Oh, Donnie, you've got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
The sharpest football contest show in the land, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show, focuses on Circa Sports Million, Circa Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With two former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
We live in a society right now where everybody's a snowflake, everybody's a cupcake, and everybody thinks that nothing is fair. Everything is like, it's not fair. We should have a better chance. We need more. You know what? I'm old enough to remember when you needed to have a perfect goddamn record to win a college football championship. That's the way it was. 11-1, too bad.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
When you look at Marcus Johnson, when you look at Nikola Jokic, these aren't guys that are big, super athletic, dunking and jumping over people. These are just guys that are clean, skilled footwork, and do things below the rim to make the everyday guy look like and be like, I can do that. But you can't, and neither can I.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Back at it with Pro Football Today. As promised, the pregame party, but it continues with Joe Lisi to continue breaking down some best bets, angles, and all the goodies for Thursday Night Football. The Browns hosting the Steelers. So I've got to ask. I asked and harassed the other three. Initial thoughts when it comes to this matchup. Everybody was worried about weather. Then everyone's like, it's going to be a run-heavy game. Then Donnie mentioned on Game Time Decisions, don't be so swayed by the weather. These two teams know how to play in some winter conditions. What do you think?
Well, I agree with Donnie in the sense that I am on the over 36.5, and I did take a contrarian approach. I know that Pittsburgh picked up the victory as a 3.5-point dog last week against Baltimore. Short week, divisional opponent that got abused by Taysom Hill and the New Orleans Saints. I'm going to take the 3.5 points. I don't know how it comes down. It could be a field goal in terms of that. I might sprinkle a little on the money line as well, but I feel confident with the 3.5. And I like the over tonight, Kasey. I think we get through the 36.5.
Okay. I've had a number of people mention the over, especially because it just dropped a little too low. When it was sitting at potentially 41.5 a bit earlier, that was maybe something, but 36 is just way too low. Now, let's take this kind of head-to-head by the position groups. You've got Russell Wilson taking on Jameis Winston. Winston with one of his cleaner performances versus the Saints, even though they did not get the victory. What do you like when it comes to the two QBs? Because we had Kaufman, who took both of them over because their props are sitting quite low. Winston at 212, I think I saw last, and then 182 when it comes to Russell Wilson.
I still would take Jameis Winston over the 217.5 just because I think they need to be a little bit more aggressive. They're playing at home. The defense hasn't been as consistent as the Pittsburgh Steelers. And again, you know, they have nothing to lose at 2-8 overall. But Jameis Winston's put up numbers, 300 yards, 395 plus against New Orleans last week. He still moved the football against L.A., had some red zone turnovers. That's why they lost that matchup. by 17 points a couple weeks ago, but I still think Jameis Winston is the quarterback that has to get through his number tonight.
All right. I would agree with that also because Nick Chubb, a lot of people are saying he doesn't particularly look like himself these days. He's not the same workhorse that he once was. And then on top of it, you're also talking about a Steelers defense that is a brick wall and one of the top run-stop defenses out there. So he has to air out the ball. They have nothing to lose, as you mentioned. So who are some targets you'd probably look at? Because there's so many options when it comes to Jameis Winston and this Browns offense. More importantly, a lot of people leaning towards the tight end. But I like Cedric Wilson because of his numbers on home field more consistently sitting over 40, and his numbers sitting at 42.5.
Yeah, it's a good look. I mean, Cedric Tillman, Njoku, I understand, the look in regards to that. Tillman has had a huge performance a couple weeks ago. He is a number one target, does make plays and yards after the catch. Judy is another one in terms of anytime touchdown, plus 390 tonight. Even Nick Chubb or Jerome Ford coming out of the backfield, catching short to intermediate throws, especially if weather's going to be somewhat of a concern. Let's say there is some wind, short throws coming out of the backfield. I like Chubb and I like Jerome Ford in the receiving game.
Ooh, I'm a big fan of that. Now switching over to the Steelers offense and wide receiving options. We know that sometimes they can get off to some slow starts. Takes a minute for Wilson to get going here, but he has had an undeniable connection with George Pickens. His number, weirdly enough, sitting at 61.5 regardless of how much work they've done together this season.
He could get through that number, but I'm going with Freiermuth, the tight end tonight. I altered him to 40+. He's also, I believe, plus 410 or in the area 390 to score a touchdown tonight. And I'll take a shot on the other tight end, Darnell Washington. I'm on him each and every week at 10-1 to hit Bay Dirt. He's a big tight end. I think the tight ends will be a factor for Pittsburgh, Kasey, so we'll see how it plays out.
I'll never argue against the tight end love whatsoever. Freiermuth looking at 480 to get into the end zone. When it comes to Washington, that's sitting at 11-1 odds. Something to definitely keep an eye on. Now, David Njoku sitting at plus 380. I mentioned him being one of my picks to get into the end zone for the Browns.
Good look.
The run game can't really happen. They're not big on rushing touchdowns. They only have one rushing touchdown in their last 5 games, them being the Browns. So I wasn't sure about picking a running back to get into the mix when it came to the Browns trying to score. But something else that we talked about earlier on the pregame show, you have no minuses when it comes to the touchdown category tonight. You're sitting at plus money for every single guy who has the possibility of getting it in the end zone. What do you do with this?
I think we'll take a wait-and-see approach. I mean, if you want to jump on some people, I think it is the tight end, right? I think tight end, like we said, Freiermuth are almost 5-1, Darnell Washington. And again, I still think Nick Chubb has great value as well. Maybe he's not putting up dynamic numbers, although I did jump on him 60+ tonight. If Jameis Winston does have some success, that could open up the rushing attack for Nick Chubb later in this matchup, especially if somehow, some way Cleveland does get a second-half lead. Chubb could have a performance tonight.
All right, let's talk about one of the other more popular running backs in this category. It's got to be Najee Harris. We have that guy, Tom Vecchio. He names his player of the game, and it typically works out. Najee Harris is his guy. Number sitting at 73.5. That's just bumped up 2 points here over the course of an hour. But more importantly, the option of him having rushing and receiving, he's sitting at 85.5. I found this very low for a guy who had 30 receiving yards as well as like 63 on the ground the other day, combining for 90+.
I like the look. I mean, he definitely could catch the football out of the backfield. In terms of the rushing total for Najee, I would take a wait-and-see approach because I think Cleveland will look to stuff the box, force Russell Wilson to beat them over the top early. The fact that they're at home, they have to take away the rushing attack, especially since you look at Taysom Hill and what New Orleans was able to do on the ground last week. That has to be a cause of concern and a real strength heading into this matchup. Take away Najee Harris in the rushing attack, force Pittsburgh into long third downs. So if you're taking Najee, it would be in the receiving game early, and then if his number dips, let's say, into the high 50s, that's an area to jump in from an in-game perspective.
I'm actually a fan of that approach because while there was kind of some mixed emotions on Russell Wilson winning the QB1 position as of October 20th, a lot of it was because of the ability to have those over-the-top passes. They weren't seeing it out of Justin Fields. They needed that experience and that consistency with those over-the-top passes. Now, talking about another guy who's not really in the mix conversationally, but Jaylen Warren, I've heard a number of people mention him tonight, 31.5 for his rushing yards. He's also somebody that heavily gets involved, and you're sitting at usually 9+ rush attempts in every single game. His rush attempt number is sitting at 8.5.
I like it. Again, Jaylen Warren, third down type of situations. He's more of a speedier back, can get to the outside a little bit better than Najee Harris. They like to utilize him in regards to fly sweeps, the short game in terms of the passing attack as well. But Jaylen Warren, 31.5 is a very light number. That has great value tonight. I could see him getting up to 50. If we're talking running backs, I'd rather back Jaylen Warren in terms of alt yards rushing than I would Najee Harris tonight.
Ooh, that's something that we'll definitely keep an eye on. And plus, I thought it was so interesting. His rush attempts was sitting at plus money for just the 8.5. And most of the time, he's sitting at an average of 12. His low games are a 9. So that was what I found fascinating. Now, continuing to walk through, we talked about the wide receivers. We talked about the tight ends. We talked about the running backs as well as this quarterback group. What are you expecting in terms of scoring? Because you talked about the over 36.5 total. A lot of people are just expecting this to be a runaway for the Steelers. So kind of paint me a picture of how this plays out.
I still think I have this in line in my head, 24-21 or 23-20. I still think the hook matters in terms of tonight's matchup. I think Pittsburgh, again, might win this game, but I still like the 3.5 with Cleveland. And again, I think we sail through the total, get it into the low 40s. I think that's very doable tonight. If the game does somehow, let's say, get scoreless in the first quarter and we dip into the high 20s, that's an area where I'm jumping in.
Okay, now would you say this? This would be a big thing for a lot of Steelers fans. 28-1 odds if the score is 10-3, Steelers on top versus the Browns.
Final?
Mm-hmm.
No.
First half.
First half.
Yes.
That's not a bad look. 28-1.
Yeah.
That's not a bad look. I mean, it's worth the lottery ticket. 10-3, lower scoring game. They played lower scoring last week, so that defense is going to be definitely looking to take away and force some turnovers against Jameis Winston tonight. So not a bad look at 28-1.
And against decent defenses, you're looking at a Steelers team that tends to find 9 points at least in that first half alone. Right. So a cleaner performance, a touchdown, and a field goal feels about right to me. And then would you take Jerry Jeudy or George Pickens to score the first touchdown at plus 500?
I mean, number one targets for both quarterbacks. It's not a bad look. Again, I lean to the tight ends for both teams tonight in terms of touchdown scores, but Jeudy, I think, has great value. I like him in terms of plus 390, but at 5-1 for first touchdown, it's good value.
All right, so a couple of things to keep an eye on, but we tell you this every time with Pro Football Today, the pregame show, that you're going to see Joe as well as Donnie as well as Kevin on In-Game Live to give you the live odds, lines, and angles, all the goodies for the Thursday Night Football matchup. We've got the Browns hosting the Steelers. We got a lot of people jumping on the Steelers to run away with this one with the victory. Some people touching the spread, some people just steering clear of it, some people weary of the weather conditions, but regardless, we're going to keep you up to date on all of the best options for this game here on SportsGrid. Make sure you're following all of these gentlemen, Joe Lisi, Donnie Rightside, Kevin Walsh, and then more importantly, hanging with the In-Game Live crew here on SportsGrid. It's a wrap for Pro Football Today. The pregame show coming up next is In-Game Live.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this once?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
The sharpest football contest show in the land, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show, focuses on Circa Sports Million, Circa Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With two former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
We live in a society right now where everybody's a snowflake, everybody's a cupcake, and everybody thinks that nothing is fair. Everything is like, it's not fair. We should have a better chance. We need more. You know what? I'm old enough to remember when you needed to have a perfect goddamn record to win a college football championship. That's the way it was. 11-1, too bad.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
When you look at Marcus Johnson, when you look at Nikola Jokic, these aren't guys that are big, super athletic, dunking and jumping over people. These are just guys that are clean, skilled footwork, and do things below the rim that make the everyday guy look like and be like, I can do that. But you can't, and neither can I.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.